The Legacy of Wisdom project gathers and publishes answers to many of humanity's most pressing questions from some of our most experienced and profound leaders.
How can I find my mission to gain a sense that I've fulfilled my life's potential?
Well, in my childhood and adolescence, I certainly didn't have a sense of a mission for my life. So for me, and I found out it also happened for many other people, it kind of emerged in the process of deep self-exploration. When I was working on things that happened to me in childhood, when I was reliving my birth, or I was having prenatal experiences, I was kind of clearing the traumatic imprints and also some of the programs which were laid on me by my parents, by the culture, and I was kind of slowly getting a sense of a mission. For me became somehow the exploration of a certain category of non-ordinary states, which I call holotropic, which is a category of non-ordinary states that have healing potential, that have transformative potential, even evolutionary potential. And they also have the potential to provide absolutely new information about who we are, about the human psyche, the nature of consciousness, and even nature of reality. So this is something that sort of emerged for me rather than something that I brought, you see, as something that I'm going to do in this life. I had an early sense of a mission, which was I like to paint and like to draw, and initially I wanted to go into animated movies, and then it was actually participation in the first LSD experience that I had when I participated as a volunteer, and that just opened for me this whole other area. Now retrospectively, I have a sense that it didn't take me that far from the animated movies, just a little different kind of animated movies. And then I had also a very interesting past life experience, which I described in the book, When the Impossible Happens, which took me to ancient Egypt, where I had the experience of being part of the Isis-Osiris mysteries, death, rebirth mysteries, and then ended up life of being betrayed and being poisoned, and experienced myself as dying, full of kind of negative feelings, realizing what happened to me, sort of negative feelings about the people who were involved, as so that I could not somehow use what I learned in the mysteries of death, rebirth. Part of it is training for dying in the right way. And then I suddenly had a sense that most of what I have done in this life was just trying to retrieve that knowledge and also translate it into some kind of a language that would be acceptable in modern times, bringing the mystery of death, rebirth sort of into modern culture. They were sort of also, for a while, there were sort of parts of my life that I couldn't incorporate. For example, the time that I spent in the communist country, you know, totally isolated from anything spiritual and so on. Sort of having to learn things that I was not particularly interested in, the history of the Communist Party and so on. And in one of my sessions, psychedelic sessions, I had suddenly a sense where I was given a mission. My mission was to bring spirituality into Russia and Eastern Europe. And I thought it was preposterous at that point. You know, who am I? How would I do that? Until then, when the holotropic breathwork and also the psychedelic research came into Russia, there was just enormous interest. I mean, like my books, the psychedelic books had been translated by samizdat, by the underground press long before it was acceptable. And the tremendous interest in this holotropic breathwork. And then finally, in the early 90s, we created a conference, Christina and I, in Prague, you know, which was conference of an International Transpersonal Association, where suddenly people came from Eastern Europe and from Russia, and, you know, transpersonal psychology became a big thing, and it's really a way of bringing spirituality in a certain form. So what at the time seems like a delusional kind of a fantasy, suddenly, at least partially, you know, was realized. It's quite interesting.
How do you tune in? How do you make sense of your life when it's so chaotic? Or not?
Well, I had years ago, I was working with a scientist in Maryland, a psychiatric research center. We had a program for professionals where people could come and have up to 3 high-dose sessions, you know, to help their own profession. And he, at certain point, he said, you know, I'm on the way to discover what's my Nasturtium consciousness. I said, what's Nasturtium consciousness? And he said, well, it doesn't have to be Nasturtium, could be some other flower. But you see, a flower does not have an ambition what to do. Like it grows, and you know, it just sort of is there, gets the energy from the sun and the water and the minerals, and doesn't have any ambition. It might get stepped on by a cow, it might end up in a wedding bouquet or in a salad. It just has a role to do. It's already kind of predetermined. When the plant comes, it already has its own role. And he said, I believe that we come with that kind of a role, but then it gets distorted. There are overlays of the different traumas that we experience, and the input from parents, and the input from school and from culture. And I feel if you can kind of clean it up, if you can get rid of that, that you connect to this Nasturtium consciousness. And then later I read something similar in James Hillman's book, The Soul Code, you know, when he looked at people's lives, and that many people from the beginning somehow had at least, if nothing else, then a vague intuition what they were there. And it certainly happened to me. It's with this Egyptian thing, that as I was reading things that were somehow related, you know, Egypt, pyramids, and sort of non-ordinary states, and then yoga, and I had the sense of being like a hound, you know, following some kind of traces of something that I was looking for, although it was not clear in my mind until really it came together. So he called it Nasturtium consciousness.
So you're recommending everybody go out and smell the flowers and find the core sense of themselves?
Well, what I would recommend is to do some, you know, intense inner work in addition to what people are doing in the external world. And I believe that things get kind of crystallized and clarified in that.
So for you, inner work is mostly the uncovering types of work in which you look at the conditioned aspects and gently...
Yes, I have seen people, and again it happened to me, then when you come close to kind of connecting with that kind of a mission, if you want to call it, that suddenly you change your style of being in the world, rather than think, this is what I'm going to do in the world, and this is how I'm going to do it, and I'm going to fight all the obstacles and get rid of the enemies and so on. Life becomes more like martial arts or surfing. If you're surfing, you don't say, now I'm going to go left. So you see, where am I, where are the energies going, how do I fit in? And you kind of move in that direction. And if things change, you're willing to sort of correct it. You don't have a linear kind of a trajectory for your life. And you can find that things somehow get easier, that it seems almost like the universe is cooperating, brings kind of synchronicities. Suddenly you get the information that you need, or even money sort of suddenly appears from somewhere. And then also what you're doing is not egocentric, it's not self-fulfilling at the expense of others. It's not competitive, it's kind of synergistic. So you become part of something bigger so that your self-fulfillment is also something that serves the community.
We used to call that, I guess, go with the flow.
It's a Taoistic kind of a wu-wei kind of approach.